Hello, my name is Phil Crozier. I'm the brand ambassador for Wines of Argentina. I'm going to take you through a drive, if you will, if you imagine you get in a car, through the regions of Argentina and explain a little bit about how they differ and what they mean to the diversity of Argentina. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about how Argentina is made up as a country. It is a federal republic. We have 23 different provinces, of which 12 make wine. So first of all, we're going to start in the south. If you look at all the regions here, they're all numbered. You can get this map on our website, winesofargentina.com. And we're in Patagonia, and we're in a province called Chubut. Now, in terms of Malbec, it's not a significant place because it's very cold. We are extremely in the south here. We are at 45.6 degrees south, making it amongst the most southern vineyards in the world. It's cool, it's windy, it's pretty dry, and so the production of Malbec here is very limited. There's just a couple of hectares here. However, if we go a few kilometers north, a few hundred kilometers north, we reach the provinces of Neuquén, the Rio Negro and La Pampa, and this is still in Patagonia. We're in northern Patagonia. We start to the west in a place called Neuquén. Now, this is a region that is very new. All of the vines that were planted here were planted post 1999. It's dominated by a few wineries producing excellent quality wines. And again, it's pretty windy down here. It's very dry. We get about 150 millimeters of rain. So the need for irrigation, like all of the other regions along the Andes Mountains, is totally necessary. So Neuquén is where two rivers meet. One is called the Limay, the other one is called the Neuquén River, and they meet to form a river called the Rio Negro, which is the next province we're going to visit. The Rio Negro is very different from Neuquén because this is a place that at one time had around 65 wineries. We have much fewer now. It's a much smaller region because Mendoza really dominated the wine industry after that. So we had a few wineries closed down. It's an area also very famous for its fruit production. And we have a lot of old vineyards down here. And now what's interesting about here is that there are a number of very small producers. There's lots and lots of very small producers down here that are making more sort of artisan wines and recovering a lot of old abandoned vineyards. Great varieties like Semillon, Trousseau, Merlot do very well down here, but so does Malbec. And this is true cool climate Malbec, but we have older vines. So the wines from here tend to be smaller production. They can be a little bit expensive as well, but there are some very good value ones to be found down here. Very elegant, and this is a place where I see a lot of small producers going in the future. Now, if we continue further north, well, we then come to the south of Mendoza, and we come to a place called San Rafael. San Rafael is quite an old region in Argentina. It is about 400 kilometers south of Mendoza city itself. It is near to the Andes, but it's not right next to the Andes like many of the other regions. And it is dominated by a river called the Rio Achuel. And it's an area that sometimes gets a little bit of frost, and it's quite common that you might get some hail there, but it does make very good wines, and it's dominated by a number of larger wineries, but there's some small projects down there as well. So if we keep going north, we come to the most southern part of the area that surrounds Mendoza itself, which is called the Uco Valley. Now this is an area that everybody's talking about at the moment. It's very cool. Everyone thinks of it as being quite a new region, but it's actually quite an old region. But a lot of investment has come here in the last few years. It's cool climate. It's right next to the mountains, so we have that proximity to the Andes being a cooling influence, but this is really where the cooling influence of altitude really starts to kick in. We go from around 1,050 meters above sea level right up to 1,700 meters above sea level. And it is a kind of enclosed valley in its own right. The conditions here are dry, like the rest of the Andes, and there is a little bit of dry farming here. That is to say that they don't use irrigation, but the vast majority of the vineyards need irrigation here. And one thing to bear in mind about altitude is that for every 150 meters we move up in altitude, we're decreasing temperature on average by about 1 degree Celsius. So from the southern part of the Uco Valley to the northern part, we're also going up in altitude. Now it's split into 3 sub-regions. In the south we have San Carlos. In the middle of the valley we have an area called Tunuyán, and to the north we have an area called Tupungato. Now you're going to see these names quite a lot on labels in years to come, because these have their own geographical indications. They have their own what we call IGs. But within those regions we have a lot of sub-regions too, and this is ongoing work by the excellent National Institute of Viticulture, which is based in Mendoza. So if we drive a couple of 100 kilometers further north, we're now coming to the old traditional area of Mendoza, which is commonly known as Primera Zona, or the first zone, where we have 2 main sub-regions. One is called Luján de Cuyo, which was the first area in the Americas to get its own appellation, if you like, and then we have an area called Maipú. Now this is where we find a lot of the old traditional big wineries that have become famous over the last few years in the UK and Europe. And many of the Malbecs that we fell in love with all those years ago in the late 90s in the UK came from here. It's a slightly warmer area, but there are sub-regions within that as well that you'll start seeing on there, like Agrelo, Perdriel, Vistalba, Las Compuertas. We have many sub-regions within all of these bigger regions within Argentina, and this particularly in Mendoza. So if we go to the east of Mendoza, this is where the real powerhouse of the wine industry domestically in Argentina is. It is by far and away our largest area of wine production in Argentina. Much of the wine that they drink domestically, the stuff that you'll keep in your fridge or keep outside at home, comes from here, and it is a major contribution to the wine industry in Argentina. We don't see a lot of that in the UK, that's simply because most of the wine here is made for domestic consumption, and the Argentines like a glass of wine. So if we move a little bit further north in Mendoza, there are some quite interesting new areas that are now being planted here. Some of the wineries are beginning to experiment by planting very high in altitude, up to 2,000 meters here. It's quite remote. There's quite a lot of land around here. So this is a new area where people are going to, because a lot of winemakers and wineries are beginning to go to cooler areas. That means going either up, south, or to the east towards the coast. Then we come to the second most important region in Argentina, which is called San Juan, Mendoza being the first, producing about 75% of all the wine. And in San Juan we have 4 major valleys. One is called Ullum, one is called Tullum, the very famous Zonda Valley, so called because we have a ferocious wind that comes down here every year between November and December. And then we have a new valley which is called Pedernal, which has seen quite a lot of investment in the last few years. That is strikingly different insofar that it is the only region within Argentina that has a lot of flint in the soils, thus the name Pedernal. And if we go further north from San Juan, we come to La Rioja. Now La Rioja is not to be confused with La Rioja in Spain, of course, but La Rioja is characterized by a number of bigger cooperative wineries that produce wine for export that you might see, for example, in the bigger supermarkets, Syrah, Bonarda, Malbec, Cabernet Sauvignon, Torrontés, some Chardonnay, some blends, providing excellent value for money. And when they all group together, they can really produce high quality wines at a great price. The main valley, two valleys here, one is called Chilecito, and the other one is called Famatina valleys, and we go from around 750 to around 1400 meters above sea level here. Now, if we continue to go north, we come to a region called Catamarca. Catamarca is not terribly well known outside of Argentina, but there are a few wineries here that are dotted around in this quite a dry, desolate place. We have quite a lot of organic and biodynamic winemaking going on here. There's some very interesting wines, but we really are now beginning to get into some serious high altitude territory here. Now, if you keep going to the north, we're going from a valley called the Fiambula Valley. We come to a place called Santa Maria, which is kind of the entrance to Salta. Now, Salta is more well known because the extreme nature of the vineyards here. They're very successful at exporting to the UK as well. And the main regions in Salta are, there's a village called Cavajati. I would urge you to go if you ever get the chance to go there. This is the main area of wine production within the province of Salta. But we also have a couple of other significant ones which are called Molinos and Cachi, and we have vineyards that go from around 1650 meters to over 3000 meters above sea level. So we have a very large proportion of the highest vineyards in the world here. Now, if we go a little bit further north, we're going into the province of Jujuy, which is where we really do have some very extreme vineyards now coming on stream at around 3,400 meters above sea level. It's relatively small in terms of its production, but there is some investment coming here and it's becoming more significant. And if we go further north, we get into Bolivia. Now, we've traveled around 3,000 kilometers. We've gone from 45.6 degrees south to around 23 degrees south. That's 22 degrees in terms of the number of degrees that we've gone from south to north. So that just gives you a little bit of an overview of the country, and particularly in terms of Malbec. Over the next few weeks, we'll be exploring some wines and tasting them and talking a little bit more in detail about some of those regions when we taste, as part of our celebration of Malbec World Day during April, and specifically the 17th of April, which is when we celebrate Malbec World Day. Anyway, stay in, stay safe, and thank you very much for watching.